Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Binge Books Book Club. I am so excited today to be talking about The Mister, and I am joined by a bevy of talented and superstar authors. So first and foremost, E.L. James, the author of The Mister, is joining us from the UK. We also have Laurelin, Paige, and Corinne Michaels. And we are going to be diving into this book. This is going to be spoiler free. So if you have not yet read The Mister, what are you waiting for? Go out and grab it. But don't worry, we aren't going to be giving anything away. Hopefully, you'll be as interested to read this book as we were to dive into it. So first and foremost, welcome, ladies. It's so fantastic to have you all here. And can we just start off by talking about kind of at what point in time E.L. James came into our life and kind of how we found this book. So I'll start off. For those, we are all romance authors. I should preface by saying that. And I often credit Erica at E.L. James. We're going to call her Erica today. Erica for getting me into this business. So I had never thought about writing romance, and I didn't even realize that you could have sexiness and novels combined with suspense. So 50 Shades of Grey is what brought me into this genre. And I firmly believe that thanks to this, I don't firmly believe, the success of her books is really what brought so many readers to this genre and made all of us incredibly successful. So thank you so much for that. Laurelin, do you want to introduce yourself and just say a little bit about you and how you ended up here today?
I am Laurelin Paige, and I first discovered E.L. James when a friend passed a link to something called Masters of the Universe, which I devoured really quickly and then shared the link with everybody in my church. And then on a more personal basis, as Alessandra said, I became more appreciative of you and your success as it opened doors for me as a writer. And I truly believe I wouldn't have my career if it hadn't been for you proving in an industry that there doesn't have to be glass ceilings and really motivating women to reach for the sky.
Oh, thank you. I didn't mean to.
And Corinne, I know Corinne from you as well.
I know. You brought probably all of us together in so many ways. Yeah. I was, my husband was military and I was lonely. He was deployed, and my girlfriend brought over the paperback of 50 Shades of Grey, and she was like, "Here you go." And I was like, okay. And then that introduced me into the world of romance, writing romance authors far beyond what any of us, what I even knew existed. And I had an original Kindle. So I knew what Kindle was. I knew what reading, I've been a romance reader since I was 12 years old. So, but it was, you opened this world up to all of us. And like they said, I could not be any more appreciative, because it allowed women to be women, and be proud of being a woman. And it allowed women to do what we do now, and, and it not be this stigma or, we have to pretend that we don't do what we do or read what we read or write what we write.
Oh, thank you, ladies.
It also opened a lot of conversations. I have had conversations with people that I never would have had, but because you had this book to talk about, it could open the door to you having conversations that normally someone would look at you like you were crazy to bring up. So I think that's really interesting. And we're also joined today by hundreds of readers. So don't be shy if you're watching us on YouTube or on Facebook. Please shout out in the comment section. Let us know if you've read The Mister. And any questions you have. I can let you know right now, we're not going to be able to get to everyone's questions, but we're going to try to answer as many as possible. And we kind of wanted to jump in by just talking about this book. Do you want to give a Cliff Notes version, not a Cliff Notes, but maybe just a short description, Erica, of this book for someone who maybe hasn't read it yet?
Well, it's all started from one kernel of an idea, which was a man falls in love with his cleaner. And there we go. And shenanigans ensue. And that's what the idea was. And that's the very small kernel that grew. And I actually wrote a version of this back in 2009, but it was missing something. And I remember during that time, I went to DC to meet a lot of fan fiction friends who'd been reading Master of the Universe. And whenever I fly, I buy a copy of a magazine called Country Life, which is a British magazine, and it's full of property pornography, basically. It's got estates and all this, and I was reading through, and I've actually got the page, but it's stuck on my, I'll see if I can dig it out in a second, but it's stuck on my board. And I looked at this thing, I think, how the hell do you maintain a stately home now? And that's when a penny dropped, and I thought, right. And when I rewrote what became the Mister, that's what went in there.
That is so cool. And so did you say 2009 is when you wrote the early draft of this?
A very, very early draft that, you know, it was just, yeah, no, it was sorry. I got so, yeah, very early doors.
We can all speak to our early days of writing and how rough looking everything looked back then. So jumping in to this story, we've been all chatting about this book for the last, week or two. And we were going to start off with asking about the two characters, and I won't step all over Corinne's question. But Corinne, you wanted to ask about point of views, I think.
Yeah. The one thing that a lot of us found really interesting was that you chose to write in, Maxim's POV was first person and Alessia's was in third person, or, well, she really didn't, I guess her POV would have been that. But what made you decide to write not, most contemporary or most romance write first person and first person if they're going to do alternating POVs. So kind of like, what was your reason to do first and third?
I started it as that first and first, but I actually needed them to be together, having those two POVs together. And I think if you're writing two first persons, it becomes very confusing as to who's this. So I decided to put Alessia in the third person. Also, I didn't know her very well. She was actually incredibly difficult to write. And I went to Albania and went to where she's from. And then, right, it's like this. Okay. And that was really helpful. And I got a much more solid idea of what she was like as a character. But keeping her in the third person just gave her that much more mystery. She's the person that the onion is peeled, as it were, and as the layers come off, we find out more about her. Whereas Maxim is quite straightforward. So that was that's basically why I decided to do that.
Does that continue like that in book 2? I'm sorry, I jumped in.
Yes, it does. I did wonder about switching it up and what have you, but it just felt very natural to carry on in that way. And it's interesting because there's certain bits where she's talking in Albanian, but we're in Maxim's point of view, so we have no idea what she says. So you're going to have to put it into Google. So it's only a couple of times because he doesn't have a clue.
But he doesn't know. Yeah.
No. So it was it's sort of interesting. And it's also
narrating her then as third person allowed you to kind of get to know her better.
Yes, it did. It gave me a bit of distance, and I needed that because I feel that I really know them very well now, having completed the second book, and they're very dear to me. So, but I know her a lot better, and she's so cool. She's very domestic, which I'm not at all. I kind of aspire to be that way, and I'm just not at all. So yeah. Anyway, that's hashtag spoiler. So I'll shut up.
I liked how domestic she was. Like, she seemed like such a caring, nurturing person, and I think for him and his lifestyle, especially like how he was at the beginning of the book, it just was just little pieces of her caring for him and I liked seeing that. And it was something a little different. And I love the point of view. It took me a little bit to get used to it just because I haven't seen it. But now it's almost like, why are more books not like this? Because it was great not having to wait for the next chapter to be able to see
Absolutely.
reaction, and having the two different point of views. I never was guessing whose head I was in. It was always like, obviously this is her, obviously this is him. And normally you just can't go from one paragraph to another in a different point of view without us getting confused.
And also, I need to tell the story. I needed both of their points of view as well in the Mister. So, you know, when, for example, when she heads back to her homeland, that we had to see what was going on there.
It was very fresh too. That's the other thing I liked about it. It was just that it was different, and it's hard to do things new these days, and that's admirable.
Oh, thank you.
And talking about you actually going to Albania, this was the first character I've read that I can think of that's from Albania. So can you talk a little bit? She had such a struggle, I mean, and such a backstory of how she ended up being this daily. So can you talk about the creation of her and why Albania and how,
you know what, when I wrote this story back in 2000, I just thought, Albania. And I really didn't give it any more thought than that.
And that was back in 2009.
And that was back in 2009. And I just thought, when I came back to revisiting it, and, you know, with everything that's happening in the world today, you know, refugee crises, all of this kind of things, it felt incredibly relevant as well. And I mean, if anyone, I'm going to try not to get political. If anyone reads my work, I have a thing about poverty and the gap, the inequality is growing and growing and growing and growing, and I, you know, and it's not a good thing at all, and it's very distressing to see the level of poverty that some people actually live in, and that's where I came from with her, to have someone who was just had nothing, not even socks and things like that, to someone who has had everything handed to them on a plate and under our crazy inheritance trust systems. So yeah, that's I wanted to explore that as well.
One of the readers asked Jennifer on this issue, she said, you know, she read this book twice, when it first came out and then more recently, and she said, and the issue of sex trafficking was so much more, I mean, I think just visceral to her this time, and she thinks it's because it's been in the news and more forefront. So, you know, what kind of research did you have to do for this book? And is there any, if there's a reader who wants to help her on this issue, are there any groups you support or that are aware of?
There are lots of groups out there. I did a lot of research, but it's a deep dive into such a dark, depressing world. There are many books written on the subject. One of them was made into a TV show, which was just it was horrific. And yeah, yes, I went and looked at all of those, and it was a very humbling and very upsetting time. But there's a charity here in the UK called Unseen UK, I think they're called, who specialise in modern slavery, and they do a lot of things with human trafficking, as do the Salvation Army actually. They're very helpful when it comes to helping people who've been trafficked and who've been rescued and all of that. So those are two places you can start, but you just have to open the interwebs and go down this rather horrible rabbit hole.
Laurelin, you wanted to ask about the process of writing this book.
Yeah, I was very interested in, this is really only for myself, it must be much different writing an episodic style versus a novel style. And how did that feel for you? Was that a challenge, or did you find it freeing, or did you?
It was actually a huge challenge. It was huge, because this is the first book I've written in a long time that isn't based on something that I've written before. So Grey, Dark and Freed were all based on books that I've written before, and The Mister was actually, I had this very rough first draft as well. So that was different from that point of view, probably why it took me a year to do it. And going back to 50, which was written, as we know, episodically as fan fiction originally, the wonderful thing about that is you've got people crying out for the next chapter, and you've only got what's gone before. That's it. And even if I'm a pantster as well, so I have no idea where everything's going. And 50 did not end how I thought it was going to end, because the characters took over. And that was interesting. And all you had was and you can't go back and change it either. So
that would be the hardest, not being able to.
Really hard. And even now, when I look back and think about 50, there was a couple of things I would really like to change. But I just wasn't in the mindset for that. And yeah, I wish I had, but it seemed to do okay. So
yeah, I think it's fine.
Yes. So there's that, and it was great fun doing his point of view, Christian's point of view as well. So that he's an exhausting head to be in. So
would you write episodic again? Would you ever do some format of that? Not necessarily in a fan fiction format, but there's a lot of places nowadays that do have episodic.
I don't know. Maybe if I was, had an extraordinary idea, off I went. I don't know. Is my honest answer to that. So
you were saying that it was exhausting. Like the differences, to me, one of the coolest things was the differences between, like how chill Maxim was. Like you kind of said before, like he's kind of lazy. Like he's like, I think so many people expect him to be alpha. I know I went in thinking that he's going to be this billionaire alpha dominant guy, and he's not. And
back, really chill,
whatever. But at the same time, like it was really cool to see his growth through the book. Like he goes from being this kind of like carefree, I care about nobody but myself kind of feeling, to being obviously very caring for Alessia. So for when you were going through that growth process with him, was it like, how did you see him did you see him that way at the end? I know you're a pantser, but like, did you see him just his arc really growing that way, or did that kind of surprise you?
It didn't surprise me, because I knew he's fundamentally a really decent man. He's fair, he's considerate, he's all the things that which makes it quite difficult to write conflict when you've got two reasonable people. Just saying. Alessandra's gone. Alessandra's having trouble with that.
I'm sorry, my power. I'm about to be back.
just so yeah, he's very easygoing. He's at the beginning of Mr. He's in this place of grief, and he's inherited a job basically, which he's not been trained for, doesn't really know very much about, and he's slightly overwhelmed by. And the part of him, I think, is itching to get on with it because he wants to prove himself, and I don't think he's aware of that. And I think he becomes aware of that as the story moves on, and he steps into those shoes quite well. More of that in the Misses.
I loved how he was like such a gentleman. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I just want to say I love how he was such a gentleman with her. I mean, it was like, and for me, it was extremely plausible. It was, he was making such a big transition, but he was just consistent with her. Like he was always there for her. He was a rock. I mean, he always had her safety or, comfort in mind. And that was just really refreshing and beautiful. Like that was just part of the love story that I really liked. And to me, what really made this like a Cinderella story was, it wasn't just that she was being brought into a life that was so much better than what she was. He really felt like a Prince Charming to me. Like that was something I loved about him.
I think so. I mean, I think his motives were slightly questionable.
Well, he's a guy. I mean,
he's a guy, but no, he doesn't act on those too much.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's conflicted, which is good, I think. Because he's a decent human being.
Piggybacking on that, though, he was a broken character, and along with the Cinderella trope, he is a broken man. which is one of my favorite tropes, watching a broken character. And I was wondering if that is one of your favorite tropes as well,
Yeah,
as you've had
definitely. Definitely. I think so. I like damaged. Hey, he's not, I mean, he's not 50 Shades, let's say.
that. No,
He's
no,
factory.
he's a different broken.
Different broken, but it's yeah, it's someone who's you know has not really embraced intimacy in any big way, because he hasn't met the right person. So
We
yeah.
have a few questions I'm going to take from the live readers. The first is from Lizzie on YouTube, and she said, "How did you pick the names of Max and Alessia? Did you have other names in mind for them too? And were these the original names from way back in 2009?"
No, no, they were. Alessia was Alessia. She's always been Alessia, and Maxim was called Christian Trevelyan, and that is where that comes from. And when I took his name for the fan fiction to go into 50 Shades, I kept Trevelyan for Max. So that's where that comes from. And everyone says, "No, they're related. Are they related?" And no, I don't think they are. But hey, you know, never say never.
So are we going to see any connections in the Missus with the Trevelyan's linking Maximum to Grace? Trevelyan,
No.
Okay.
No.
All right. That was another question.
But no, I'll leave that.
Such a tease.
You're good with the cliffhangers, I gotta say. In person and at the books. Philippa, I'm sorry, I mispronounced that name. Said
Philippa.
Looking forward to seeing how Alessia will be as a wife and Maxim as a husband. She has so much she's curious about. She can't wait to see these two become one. So how was it for you writing the Missus? And how much can you share with us about?
It was difficult because like they're two reasonable people, and you know, where are you going to get conflict from two reasonable people? It's very, very difficult. And in fact, I gave up at one stage and I had to go on holiday and lie down on a sun lounger, because that's the only time. I don't know if you feel the same, when you're just relaxing and all these ideas will just come and you can sort things out and what have you. And unfortunately, I hurt my knee on the first. I fell off the dock. I wasn't even drunk. Anyway, I fell off the dock into the sea and hurt my knee, which was very annoying because we're on a cliffside resort in Greece. But anyway, by that Wednesday, I lay down and think, I thought, oh, right, this is what I can do. And I wanted to go home. We were booked there until Saturday. So I've sorted the problem out. We've got to go home. I've got to get on with this. So that was very frustrating. But hopefully, I loved their journey and where they end up and how they get there. And I hope everyone who reads it will love it too.
Laura Rosa said, "Have you ever visited the places you wrote in the Mister?" So I know you said you went to Albania. First of all, was that in winter, or what was the season when you were there?
It was March, actually. It was March. It was slightly later than when we were there. The book is set slightly earlier in the year. We went. I have been. That's the other thing. Yes, and Cornwall. I'm very lucky to have a beach house down there, so I know Cornwall very well. And in fact, I got to when I got to the stately home. We were in Cornwall. I said, I need to stay home because I have to. I don't know about you guys, but I have to see it to write it. And there's a huge stately home in Cornwall. We went round and I based Maxim's Cornish estate on that, because we went round. It belongs to the National Trust now. So yeah.
I think it would have been a fantastic excuse to like rent a castle.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's a business expense, 100%.
Exactly. It's a write-off.
Absolutely.
I need to buy a castle because I'm going to write a book about it.
Maybe buying it would be then you can manage it like he does. So another a user from Facebook says that they love the little bit of humor throughout the Mister and how different it was from 50, and it was really refreshing to see you publish different stories and writing styles. And we did see a lot of humor in this book. Did you have any favorite like catch lines or phrases or moments in the book that are your favorite?
I think there's times when her English isn't great and she mucks things up like that. My mother is Chilean, so she speaks well, she used to. Sadly she has dementia now, but she's her English sometimes is a bit what. So my prepositions aren't great. I think that's because I've been brought up with her saying all the wrong things. So I'm very glad I have editors to sort that out. But yeah, there's that sort of thing. It's sort of gentle humor, sort of thing that like you do with your partner. You're sort of gently humoring them or poking fun at them sometimes. Actually, I'm not very gentle with my husband when it comes to that.
I think we joke a lot.
But, 35 years. And
so because you did write the Mr. and published it, and then there was quite a gap before the Mrs. I think this question's really great from Ciara. If you could change something from the book, The Mr., what would it be and why? I know you said it's hard because they're both such reasonable individuals.
Yeah.
I have changed to help people.
There is much. I changed just a few things of dialogue, but only the dialogue would still just the things, just very tiny little bits. Nothing. I wouldn't change it. I'm actually really pleased with how that turned out. And I had to reread it in order to do this, and yeah, I enjoy it. I enjoy getting lost in that world. I think that's one of the other things that I love doing is to take people into a completely different world that they wouldn't normally be in, and what have you. And that's a great fun experience for me as well, and all the research that goes with that. And we have to go to the House of Lords now. I just want to have a look at this or something to my husband. So yeah, it's good fun.
You obviously had this storyline in mind. I didn't realize it went back to 2009, but way before Harry and Meghan. But did Harry and Meghan and that whole love story, watching that unfold, did that affect anything? I'm trying to think. You had published the Mr. before, right? Before they.
I'm not sure. I'm not quite sure of their timeline. There's a misnomer that people think that the British are obsessed with the royal family. Some people are, but some people really don't give a toss. And I was very, very upset when the Queen died. I was surprised how upset I was when the Queen died. She's always been the Queen and what have you. And I was very upset. So Harry and Meghan, I think just let them be, leave them alone. The British press is evil to these people. It's quite sad, really. But no, I don't think they influenced me in that kind of way. I don't think so. I mean, maybe on a subliminal level that I'm not aware of. You don't know. But they're not people that I think about. In fact, I've trained my Twitter algorithm not to bring them up.
Like, don't show it to me.
Not interested. So there we go.
One of the things that I'm always really fascinated about when I hear E.L. James, I always think of music. I'm a musician, and I really always love that your books have music in them. That's just been consistent from the first minute I ever read you. And I was curious about your own relationship with music. Do you listen avidly? Do you have a wide range of things that you listen to? Speak to that.
That's a great question. Thank you, Laurelin. I love music, and I really resent the fact that my mother never made me learn the piano. She said, "If you do want to learn the piano," I said no, as a child, like you do. And that was it, because she was forced to learn the piano and she hated it. So there we go. My children can both play the piano and they can both play guitars, and I think they love it still. So that's good. It was really important to me. I've always loved music, and what was interesting for me with 50 is that Christian has a very eclectic music taste. I mean, hugely eclectic. Whereas Maxim doesn't, and he doesn't share my music taste at all. So I'd have to go to my son, who really likes what I call techno shite, and have to say, I need this. Can you have a good sort of song? Can you do this? And he's actually works in sort of audio production. So he was very handy with that. But no, I regret not being able to play. My husband bought me a piano, and I did have lessons, but my teacher wasn't very good. She was used to teaching very small children, so it wasn't a fun experience for me. But you know, maybe it's something I'll get back to. I got an app about piano things. What do you play?
I play the piano, but I also played the drums when I was younger, and I was a vocalist. I was majored in musical theater, so music has always just been one of my loves.
No, I love it, and I love a huge range of things, and it's so much fun finding the music for this as well. And that's you know, and that's another deep dive. So after the trafficking, you go and look at music because it's so uplifting, you know.
But I think
I was going to ask about that too, because you have a list of all the music in the back of the book.
Absolutely. And I have a playlist for every book, and I've got two. Well, I've written half of one and all of another. And if I hear a song from any of those, it puts me right back in the book. I don't know if that's how.
Well, I think as a reader, though, like that's one of the things, like there are songs that I listen to that I can tie to a book because the author did such a good job immersing us in the sound and the whatever. So it's just another really great way for, I think, as a writer to really, you know, it hits another one of our five senses, right? So it's like that song. There was a song I'll never forget. It's called "The Song Remembers When," and it literally is all about how like you can hear the song and it takes you back to whatever it was you were doing when you heard that song. And hers is a love story, so it's all about like how that song remembers how she felt with this guy. And I think the same applies like with books. Like you can use music in a way, you know, and Laurelin, like you were saying with the audiobook, how profound that was for you as a listener too, right?
Yeah, the choice to have the little snippets of music for those of you who didn't listen to the audiobook and read the book instead. The audiobook has little snippets of the music playing whenever Alessia is playing on the piano, which really it's entertaining to the ear and refreshing again because it's a choice that I haven't heard before. Did you have any input in that decision?
No, I didn't. That was PRH's idea. PRH Audio. They came up with that, which I'm so grateful for because I think it's such a lovely ad. I was just zoning them to the right song. There's one. Bach wrote two books of preludes and fugues, and they took them wrong one. No, it's this one, not that.
I was curious. When I was listening because I don't know one classical song from another unless it's super famous. I was like, oh, I wonder if this is actually the song that she's playing or if they just picked, but it's actually what she's playing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really
cool. Really cool.
Yeah.
There's a little education there, a little music.
Yeah. What about he's a composer. Did you ever think about having somebody compose?
I didn't actually. I had two songs that there was. Carly Commando did a thing called Peaceful, and then there's I don't know if you know, which I just adore. It's one of my favorite. It's an incredibly sad movie called Arrival, which has an extraordinary soundtrack in it. And there's the track that I had in my head, which is in the playlist, was Max Richter. I can't remember what it's called. It's if you hear it, you'll know it. That's what I had in my head for his thing. If we ever make a movie, maybe we'll get to hear what it's like then. Composer doing it.
Yeah, because one of the questions from Facebook was, will we get a second playlist of songs and scores for the Mister? So do you publish those? I mean, I know it was in.
Will we get a second playlist of songs for the Mister? No.
I think I'm wondering if she's asking for the Misses.
Misses, yes. There is another playlist for the Misses.
And you listen to music when you write, also, correct?
Yes, I'll listen to the same song over and over and over again. I put headphones on, and actually, everything else goes away. Even the song does actually. So it just helps for the ADHD of me just to concentrate on the words. I mean, I don't know if you find that. Some people have to have complete. Yeah. I have to have music.
This is another really great question, and I love her username, Shades of Rebecca. So she said the Mister talks about
synesthesia.
Yeah. Do you know someone personally that has this ability? How did that come to play a part in the book?
No, I don't know anyone who has synesthesia. Let me just check because I'm old. Let me just. Do I know anyone? Well, I just think so. And if you do know me and you do, I'm sorry, I've forgotten.
Did it just come out in research?
It
about
just.
music?
I mean, I knew about it. I've heard about it. I've always found it completely and utterly fascinating. And synesthesia can be in all sorts of different ways, like a taste or Mondays are blue, or it could be words. It could be. It's a very strange connectivity thing in your brain, or in one's brain, and I was just fascinated by that. And I just thought, why is she so good? How does she remember all of these tunes? And I thought, well, let's give her synesthesia, and that just seemed to make sense.
My daughter has synesthesia, and so it's interesting always to have some. Yeah, I'm jealous. I think it's fascinating. And she'll be like, that sound. And it's not music for her, but it's particular sounds or smells. Smells in particular have colors to her.
Oh, that's extraordinary.
So did she just describe that, like from a young age? She'd be like, oh, this smells green.
Yeah.
And that's how it came out. That's so cool.
Is it consistent?
No, sometimes she doesn't have that. There are times that are stronger than others. She also has a lot of smell hallucinations.
Oh, wow.
Which is fascinating as well. Particularly if she's about ready to have a migraine.
Yeah. I get that. I actually, and when I get a migraine, I don't have them very often. In fact, I haven't had one for a long time, but I used to get that, definitely. Sense of smell goes through the roof. Sniff out.
And she then will imagine things, and then they'll be in colors, and it will be just very, very interesting.
Wow.
When chatting about the book, me and Laurelin were both not in love, but we both really loved the relationship of Caroline and Maxim. Not that we loved, I mean, she was bad, but there was this like delicious joy in just their dynamic. So I was just very curious about whether she was always in your mind. And again, you wrote this so long ago, it might be hard for you to remember, but I'm just curious.
She's very clear in my mind. She's always been very clear in my mind. She's a very forthright, able young woman, but she's in the throes of grief at the time. And her and Maxim go back to when they were 13 years old. They have a very, very long relationship. And that's complicated. They
were
they're romantically
each other's first, or
yes.
one of their first. I mean, I don't think that's a spoiler, but so there is that bond.
They have a hugely strong bond, and it's a hashtag awkward sometimes.
Yeah.
The backstory about it, though, is just really delicious. And that even that you don't even explore it too much. There's just hints of it, but that it feels that there's this whole history between them with just a few of those references, which is.
I think they just get on really, really well,
Yeah.
So.
And I love that you see also how much he cares for her. You see a hint of who he is, even just from the very beginning, even before he, falls in love and everything else. You can see that there is a human, in how he cares for her. I loved that.
I think that the people he cares about, he cares very deeply about. Like, he doesn't really, if he cares about you, he cares about you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think you're right. Yeah.
Doesn't he seem a little bit, Corinne, like the guy who doesn't think he can, he's not meant to have the role of the title. He's stepping into his brother's role seems very overwhelming to him. But he reminds me kind of like a Tin Man, who the whole time is like, I wish I had a heart, but he had the heart the whole time. Yeah. It feels like Maxim actually has those abilities to care about people and take care of a whole community more than you realize.
But he's so like, in the beginning, at least, he's so like, I don't need this. I don't want this. I'm not this guy. I'm not that. Like, it's almost like he's so hard to like make himself fit in his mold that he's not meant to be in.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think a Tin Man is a very good analogy. Very much so.
But in the heart, he's just big, squishy.
He's a big squishy man.
Yes.
Pearl squishy in the middle.
Squishy.
We've had a lot of questions about Kit. And Christina from Facebook says, will we get the backstory on Kit's death in The Misses?
Yes.
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 Okay.
That's all we're going to give you guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you always knew it was going to be the brother, like not a father who passed away and left this responsibility?
I think if it's a father passing away, then you know that this is what you're going to inherit.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah,
the
that's a good point.
Yeah, and if your brother is taking care of all of that, then you're living I can't say that probably. You're just living a fabulous life. He's wealthy. He's good looking. Yeah.
With no responsibility.
No responsibility, but bored. He's bored. He's bored. Doesn't have to do anything. It's not good. It's not good for a person.
Is the spare a term? Is that like a common term with? Like,
I think amongst I think people who have titles, yes, you need a spare just in case, because you need to keep the titles. If it, you've all seen Downton Abbey. God's sake, it's a stranger who lives in Leicestershire or whatever happened in that thing.
The cousin that is whatever that they don't want the cousin to inherit.
Exactly, or sorry, people are arriving at my house. The stately home that I was speaking to you about in Cornwall, that they ran out of heirs. After the First World War, Second World War bumped a whole generation of young men off the planet, and that's it. It's gone. There was no one to inherit. The title became,
or the estate,
and the estate went into rack and ruin. I think it was sold off to the National Trust, who are the body that looks after stately homes in this country.
I do want to remind just everyone watching, sorry, that The Misses is the sequel to The Mister, and it goes on sale June 20th. And that is both in the UK and the US. It goes on sale, as well as, can you just talk a little bit about, if they're interested in the book, where they'd be able to get it on the 20th?
On the 20th, it will be available in the UK, the UK and Ireland, in North America. That's the US and Canada. I think as we like to say, or used to say here in the UK, in the Commonwealth countries, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that anymore, but there we go. And various foreign languages. I haven't got all of the dates for all of the foreign press yet, and my agents have been at the London Book Fair the last week, so I hope to have something by the end of this week, and let everybody know when it's coming out. I think it's coming out in Germany on the 20th as well, 20th of June.
Samantha from YouTube said that Corinne mentioned Erica as a pantser. I was curious if you have to do multiple revisions, Erica, or do you revise as you go with structure points in the back of your mind, or something else entirely?
I wouldn't know a structure point if it smacked me on the arse. I have to confess.
So you're like complete pantser. You're like, I have this and we'll see where it grows.
Yeah. What's a structure point? I don't know what that is.
Like, do you know like the basic blocks of the story, beginning, middle, end?
No.
So you didn't know how The Mister is going to end until it did?
No.
Wow. I act shocked, like I'm not the exact same way, but
I just go into, so the guy falls in love with his cleaner. That's what I started with. Where do we end up? There we ended up.
Laurelin, we had that. Didn't we have like a thing where it was like you were like fall in like complete pantser, complete this, complete, like, remember there was like these subs, whatever.
Yes, I always say that I'm an outliner who pants, so I'm a panty liner.
Nice.
Like I at least The only things I know typically is like, I know that I'm going to start here. I have a middle point. This is going to be the conflict and then HEA. Like, I mean, if you're writing romance, we know it's going to be the HEA. So then I'm like, I don't know how we're going to get to here. I don't know how we're going to resolve the conflict, but I know this is what it's going to be. And sometimes it changes, but.
Well, going back to that question, that's why I had to go to Greece, because it just went off down. I thought, oh, this went down what we call a cul-de-sac. You know, it was a no-through road, so I had to turn around and come back and throw out 15,000 words.
Oh, so you did have to backtrack.
Yeah. Because I thought, this is getting me nowhere, and I had to go and lie down on a sun lounger.
At what stage? And that was when you were writing the Mr. or the Mrs.?
Not when I was writing the Mr. The Mr. just sort of
flew out of you.
The Mrs. was hard, but it's the first book I've written on its own for a long, long time. So I didn't have something else to base it on. Like Freed was the last thing I wrote, which I had 50 Shades Freed to write on, to base it on. So yeah, it was a bit of a shock to the system, frankly.
I can't.
Training wheels. Where do we start again?
Yes, it's a bit like that. Structure.
I feel like that every time after. I'm sure the others feel the same way. I'm at 48 books now, and every single time I sit in front of the page, I feel like, how do you write a book again?
And you have to like phone a friend. You're like, am I doing this right? Like, is this how you do it? I don't remember.
Yeah.
Someone said that's why her books and stories are so good. You never know what's next.
Oh, that's very kind of you. Thank you.
So it works out.
I never know what's next. And that is one of the wonderful things, is that you'll discover things. You go, oh my God, we're going there. Oh, I didn't know that. And there's certain things that happen throughout all of the books that I've written. I thought, oh, I didn't know that. And then there it is on the page. Whew, that was a surprise. Always.
Yeah, the best is when the characters run away.
Yeah, absolutely. Will there be Audible available? Yes, there will, Judy. There will be an Audible available for the Misses as well.
Same narrators?
Yes.
Oh. I really liked those narrators.
Yeah, they're good. They're very good. And not in Italy, apparently, for the Italians.
Oh.
There have been different narrators.
Oh, I'm pretty sure you probably won't answer this question, but Deborah said, will Max and Alyssa, maybe not in this book, but in the future, do you think that they'll ever have a baby together?
Go to his Uncle Cameron if they don't. Rowena doesn't approve of him. I think that's mentioned in the Mister. So.
Let's see, and then we have a lot of readers. A third book in the series.
Is there going to be a third book? I don't know. I don't know. They're in a good place. HEA, like you say, Corinne.
There's an HEA, people.
So
many people talked about this one having a cliffhanger, and the three of us were like, really?
I just added, I've just got to tell my mother. That's all I did.
I was like, I don't think
I thought that was quite funny. And then everyone said, oh,
great line. Yeah, it was a great last line.
There are people saying that, where's that, like, but we're all very, I mean, we know what a cliffhanger is like.
Yes, exactly. Well,
I thought it was a good hint. It was to come, because then I also was like, oh, maybe the Mrs. is the mom. Like maybe this book is going to feature more, her and, her involvement in their lives, or, I thought your surrounding cast of characters was so interesting and so varied, and just like his friends at the house, and I mean, there were so many that I was like, oh, I wonder if they're going to have a book. I wonder if they're going to have a book. I think you could write a lot in this world.
Yes, it's a great fun world, and I do love his friends. He's got Tom and Joe. They're very different, but they're all we're all at school together, and Tom's very pompous and Joe's very cool. So yeah, no, they're fun.
Yeah. Perfect. Someone says, did Mr. Grumpy have to help with any particular scenes with Mr. and Mrs.?
Did he help with anything particular? I always talk to him about things, and he will always read a chapter when I've finished it. even then if I then go and rewrite it. Did he help me with anything? I don't remember him help. I mean, he was just someone to talk to or talk
Yeah.
at, actually, more than anything. And he has to really restrain himself from trying to, because every word, I don't know if you find this with your phone, every word out of your mouth is a problem that needs solving. And actually, you just want to just say something. You don't need, no, just.
You just want to talk through it.
Yes. So I can't think of anything specific. I can't think of anything specific. I'm sure there was, but there's nothing that springs to mind. I'm very lucky that I have his nephew's living with us at the moment, and he went to a very posh school, so that's really helpful for posh boy speak.
We do have
Oh, that's who it was. I saw the acknowledgements. I was wondering who that was that you were thinking of, Leonard. Yeah.
So James, our nephew.
And we do have a fantastic prize. So we have 2 winners. So I do want to take this moment to announce them. So drum roll, please. Congratulations to Hafsa Q. I hope I pronounced your name right. You're winning the grand prize, which is a Joe Malone deluxe candle. I did see a Joe Malone mention in the book. So plus a signed copy of the Misses. And do you have the cover with you of the Misses?
All I have is this, which is, because I don't actually have the book yet. This is the print.
Yeah.
I have to do the print. So, and this is oh, for God's sake, my photograph, which I took in a local park around here. When I took it, I thought, oh, that's gonna be a book cover.
Oh, that's super cool.
Oh,
You post some great photos. Are you a photographer? I mean,
no,
on the side, I know
my phone.
you have another job, but you know.
I love, and I'm very lucky is that Bloom lets me do it. So yeah, in fact, the other one on the Mister is my photograph as well. But it confused everybody with embankment. Anyway, but anyway, it's a place. So.
There. And also, congratulations to Christine J. You won the runner-up prize, which is also a candle, a Joe Malone candle, and I think a signed copy of the Misses also. But we'll email you both the details of that. So thank you so much. Please check your email to those 2 prize winners. Congratulations. And thank you to everyone who joined us live today. Again, if you have not yet read the Mister, please grab it now in anticipation of the Misses, which is coming June 20th, which will be here before we know it. You can pre-order your copy now on your favorite retailer, and it will release in all formats. So you can enjoy it however you like to read your books. Thank you so much, Laurelin and Corinne, for joining me today. Thank you, of course, Erica, for being here. It was great to see all of you.
And well, I want to say a big shout out to Laurelin and Corinne, and to you, Alessandra. Thank you so much for doing this. I really, really appreciate it. I will be sending you something indecent in the post.
I'm so excited. Thank you all.
It's a joy. I always love to be able to chat with other great writers, and all of you. It was a great conversation.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And thank you to everyone who tuned in. It's really nice of you to join us. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you all.